Hey guys, it's Mason, and this is Wrestling in the Dark, the only professional wrestling podcast brought to you by a blind wrestling fan. I've really enjoyed dipping my toe into the independent wrestling scene recently. I watched AEW's Double or Nothing. I watched an episode of Impact. I watched Mox and Juice last week going at it in New Japan. And now I've watched my first ever full-length episode of ROH. So what did I think of it? If you want to find out, stick around as I take a look at the latest episode of Ring of Honor and see how it all panned out. This was a surprising experience for me. I really expected to like it, and in all honesty, I didn't like it that much. So, let's get to it. What happened? The opening of the show was actually a wrestling match, which I was happy with. You know, it's always nice when you kick off with a match. And it was a nice introduction into the episode as the commentators put over the fact that they're 3 weeks away from the Best in the World pay-per-view. And the match kicked off, the show kicked off with an NWA national title match between James Storm and the champion Colt Cabana, and in all honesty, it probably was decent in ring. I'm sure it was fun to watch, but it was very light on the commentary. They really didn't say much, and I have heard so many good things about the Ring of Honor commentary. Now, I didn't think that it was terrible, and in a way, I definitely thought that it was maybe a little bit better than some of the New Japan stuff that I saw last week with the Mox and Juice match, but I'm actually not sure about that now I'm thinking about it. Having said that, there wasn't that much chance to actually experience what the ROH commentary was like, because this show really only had one wrestling match, and like I said, the NWA national title match had a 15-minute it had a 15-minute time limit, as they explained is the case when it comes to these sorts of matches. They really played up the fact that James Storm wasn't necessarily wrestling the way that he usually would, that he was wary of Colt Cabana's technical style. They really put over that James Storm would usually get in the face of his opponents and try and take it to him, make it a bit of a brawl, whereas he wasn't sure how to handle Colt Cabana. And really, we only got a few calls for the moves. At one point, they told us that Cabana was working James Storm's shoulder. We got a call of a big kick to the head, I think, that Storm got on Colt Cabana. We got a tilt-a-whirl, head scissors. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot that they actually said with the commentary. It was really mostly putting over what the commentators thought of the competitors. And it was a little bit disappointing. It really I came in with not super high expectations, but after what people have said about Ring of Honor commentary and the in-ring product, etc., I was just expecting a little bit more of a pure wrestling product. And then this match wasn't the best match that it's ever been. It came to a 15-minute time limit draw. I think that the best match was probably a near fall that we got from best part of the match, was a near fall that we got from Colt Cabana hitting his moonsault. That there was a 2 count that the fans were absolutely convinced was a 3, and they actually went wild for that, and that was probably the best part of the match. Then at the end, James Storm hit 2 last calls and locked in the cloverleaf. This led to, is Cabana going to tap? But the time limit ran out. The crowd called for 5 more minutes, and Cabana was about to give it to him when the Briscoes came out and attacked. They attacked Colt Cabana, and they were talking trash, saying that the NWA have screwed the Briscoes at the Crockett Cup when they got disqualified, and it's time to do some screwing of their own with Ring of Honor. They were they were talking trash to Nick Aldis, who'd already been eyed up by James Storm throughout the match. He was like constantly looking at Nick Aldis, and Nick Aldis was like, "This isn't your championship. Focus on the one that you're fighting for now before you try coming for mine." But the Briscoes were talking trash to Nick Aldis. He got up and fought, and they ended up choking him out along with Cabana. Past that, this was a promo show. So I gave that match a 3 out of 6. It really didn't draw me in. I didn't feel like the commentary even really tried. It wasn't that strong. There wasn't that much that went on in the match, and it didn't necessarily make me want to see more from either guy. So I did enjoy the post-match stuff with the Briscoes, though. And Nick Aldis seems like he's got quite a lot of charisma. He was probably the one that I enjoyed most in this opening segment. I thought he came across as quite charismatic and interesting. But other than that, I didn't think it was that strong of a match. But that could just be because of the commentary letting it down, because I'm sure if I could see it, then it would have been decent in-ring stuff. Other than that, we got a Jeff Cobb promo where he talks about facing Matt Taven at the Best in the World. He details borrowing someone's bicycle and riding that to a Hawaiian pro wrestling show and getting started that way. He said that he was prepared for wrestling because of amateur wrestling, and learning the in-ring side, the physical side of wrestling, was easy for him. He talked about last time he had an opportunity at the ROH World Championship. It was against Punishment Martinez, who he beat in under 3 minutes. They showed a replay of that. And this was a fairly interesting one. I have heard things about Jeff Cobb. I did think that he came across, again, with some good charisma, did connect to him, and I would probably watch Cobb versus Taven just from that match. So, yeah, that one is goal achieved. Then we had Silas Young, the wrestling's last real man, and he comes out and talks about turning over a new leaf, says the days of cutting corners, taking shortcuts, doing what he thinks needs to be done to win a match is over, and talks about wanting to move on from that. And then he puts over that he could have had a wrestling match tonight with anyone from the ROH roster, but he'd have just won that match, and that's not a challenge for him. So he wanted to push himself and take on someone that was better than anyone in ROH, that was trained by Luthers and has beat people like Johnny Saint. And then it was the Squid, whoever the Squid is. Apparently, from what the commentator was putting over, it was just some sort of play on the octopus. It's really escaping me now who the person they were on about was that Silas Young is feuding with, but he was taking shots essentially at the person that he's feuding with. They had a quote-unquote technical match with the Squid. It was just sort of, it was basically taken up with the commentary talking about how good Silas Young could be, but how he's not that good because he's always cutting corners and doing things like this. Towards the end, at the end of the match, he locked in the abdominal stretch on the Squid, and the Squid tapped out, but he held the move on. And then literally, that is it, other than this next bit, which was Mark Haskins coming out. Now this was, again, probably one of the better parts of the show, but I had problems with it. So Mark Haskins comes out and he explains how Lifeblood started with Juice Robinson and Tracy Williams and himself and various other people like Tennille Dashwood, and he talks about how he is not just some half-arsed entertainer, that he's a gritty, fight you any day of the week and twice on Sundays kind of guy. He talks about being a wrestler. That's why he has come to Ring of Honor, because that's where wrestling matters. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're talking about ROH being where wrestling matters, and you had more promo on than a WWE show. Like, I was coming in expecting NXT, and you've given me Raw. It was just sort of ridiculous. By this point in the show, I was just sort of disappointed, and even though Haskins' promo was really spot on, he showed some really good fire, and I'd like to see more from him, it just, that little point just frustrated me so much. He talks about Tennille Dashwood wanting to come back after injury and prove herself and become great, but says that Bully Ray took that away from her. They didn't say how he did that. Then he demands that Bully Ray come out, and Bully Ray does. Bully Ray asks Mark Haskins if he's going to keep barking or whether they're going to get to fighting, and Haskins tells him that he wants to fight. Then the ROH TV champion Shane Taylor comes out, and they go fight Haskins, but the odds are evened by Tracy Williams. Then we get, let's have a tag team match, player, and they literally were going to do a tag match, but whoever the soldiers of savagery are came out and attacked everyone. PJ Black came out to try and help Lifeblood, but ended up getting put through a table, and that was the end of that. So it really, really was surprising to me. I was expecting like an almost pure wrestling show. I didn't know whether there was going to be any promo work at all, and it was an episode that was mostly promo. You know, you had the Silas Young match, which I don't really even count. That's a jobber match. That's literally a local enhancement talent type match that was given a somewhat decent motivation. Silas Young cut a decent promo, and it was actually fairly funny, but yeah. And then that opening match definitely could have been more interesting. I was somewhat drawn in, and I really was interested because I haven't seen much NWA stuff, but the commentary just really, really let it down, and it just ended up being, like I said, like a 3 out of 6 match, and I just can't believe that I'm even saying that. I've heard so many things about Ring of Honor over the years, and I'm not saying that this is indicative of what it's like at the minute, because this might just be a bad show, but I was really, really surprised. And like I said, when Haskins said that he is a wrestler and not an entertainer, and he's here because this is where wrestling matters, and he had literally hardly any wrestling on the show, I just couldn't believe it. So it wasn't really an effective show, I don't think. The one thing that made me want to come back was the Jeff Cobb, Matt Taven thing, because I would like to see more from Jeff Cobb. I'd like to see what an ROH pay-per-view might be like. So I might try to check out the Best in the World pay-per-view, but this definitely didn't give me hope for that. I might try to watch an episode of ROH before that pay-per-view to see if it makes me interested, because this, in terms of stuff that I've watched lately, has been one of the more boring things, and I can actually say that because I don't make myself sit through the main roster. It just, like I said, I was expecting NXT and I got Raw. So that's pretty much all I have to say on this one today. It's a shorter one, and I definitely have never managed to get through a whole review in one take before, and I'm not sure whether that's a good thing, because usually there's just more to say. Whereas with this Ring of Honor, I just managed to get through the whole thing without pausing, without stopping, without needing to look at my notes, because there was just that little that happened. It was disappointing, but I guess that's just how it goes. Sometimes there's going to be bad shows. It didn't leave me wanting more, and I'm not sure whether I'd want to go back. I probably will, but it's got nothing to do with the episode. Whereas in Impact, they drew me back with the actual content of the show. I was interested in that world from that one episode that I watched, whereas in this really wasn't enough to take me back. So let me know what you think of Ring of Honor at the minute, whether this is a standard episode, a good episode, a bad episode. If you're a long-time ROH fan, how did this do for you? And let me know if you think I've been fair or unfair in the comments down below. If you want to keep up to date with Wrestling in the Dark, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notify bell. Don't leave yourself out in the cold. Come in and get involved. Right, guys, I'm off, and you should have a good one.